Hello, my name's Ken Little, and I wanted to produce a video here, which is basically like a monthly Q&A type video. We've had several viewers who said, well, why don't you answer some of our questions? And the problem is, when I do it in front of the feeders, because I give a lot of feeder talks like daily, I stand out in front of the feeder and chat about what's going on, the weather, and my kind of what I'm doing feeding wise. And but people who aren't watching that, if I answer a question or give out some information at that point in time and they're not there, then they miss it. And it only lasts like 12 hours, the video, the live streaming. So not that everybody would even go in and rewind it back 12 hours to watch what they missed anyway. So we figured the format might be better that I just produce a video instead. I collect the questions and then I answer the questions, because even if you answer the questions in chat rolls up, and unless you scroll back you don't see it, and even if you scroll back a certain amount, it could have been before, it rolls off beyond that. So this, we figured, might be a better alternative that people could watch at their leisure. And especially, if you subscribe, you get notifications of these type videos. So I encourage you to subscribe. We hit like and subscribe. We love the subscribers. But this provides people who want to learn, more about, the feeder and feeding and bird feeding and having it in their backyard, then they can do that through some of these videos. And I have feeder talk series of videos. But at some certain point in time, I felt like I was kind of repeating some of the information, so I didn't. I kind of held off doing the feeder talks. But I think there's still a void to be filled for those folks who have specific questions. And so one of my moderators suggested, why don't you do a monthly feeder talk? And we thought, well, if it's on camera, it might not be as effective because not everybody's there. But so we're doing a video. And the moderator said, well, we'll try to collect some questions along the way, and that way, you'll have a set of questions, specific questions that you can answer, and that can be helpful. And then, even once it's recorded, there might be questions on questions that can be posted in the comment section of the video that we can answer there as well. So, and have a continued discussion, because the mantra of my channel is not really just to enjoy the birds. I say we all like to, but the reason why you're there at the feeder is probably not to see me talk as much as it is to watch the birds and that. But the mantra is also to learn. I like to explore, observe, learn, and and share. And so this is part of what I like to do, and I like to learn. So I figure maybe there are some other folks out there that want to learn how to set up their own feeder. So let's get started before I get way off track, and I'll tend to do that every now and then. But I've got some written questions, and some of my answers kind of jotted down here. So if I'm looking down, checking out my pages here, then you'll know what's going on. First question we had was, okay, and it's really more of an observation, is too many feeders. Less is better. Okay, well, I understand that, and it is more soothing to watch, not a whole, rack of, feeders and that. But, that's a valid point. It's easier on the eye. You don't have to, your eye's not moving around trying to figure out, what's where, and you got one bird over here and one over here and this and that. But I'm trying to attract a larger variety of birds, and it's really a part of my overall feeder and feeding strategy. I've got nectar feeder for hummers. I've got a platform feeder, and I have a special blend that I have there that attracts wrens, warblers, bluebirds, phoebes, mockingbirds, thrashers, robins, cardinals, woodpeckers, titmice, dove, amongst other birds. And that's my special blend, and that's kind of front and center that I have there. I have a green wire mesh feeder that when you're looking at the feeder, it's kind of on the left hand side, currently. And the green wire mesh feeder is not such a fine mesh that it's just for Niger seed. It allows more. You can get black oil sunflower seed out of it, and I have kind of a blend in that, but that attracts downies and nuthatches and red-bellied woodpeckers and tufted titmouse cardinals and doves. And so, you know, I've got that over there. Then I've got the suet balls, and that's really more of a woodpecker thing, but we get some mockingbirds sometimes that hit on it, and some yellow rump magnolia warblers, you know, when they're visiting us. So that's the reason for the suet balls, to have a suet presence. And I did have a double suet cake feeder along with the suet balls, but that's kind of doubling up on it. So I'm try to work around that and leave the suet, just one suet present right now. Now, if I had the double up there, there's a better chance I could get a pileated woodpecker, because they like something that's kind of a little bit away and a bigger target there. And there's two pileated woodpeckers that we hear, or I hear, and I try to point out when they do their little vocalization in the area. But goodness gracious, wouldn't it be great to see a pileated woodpecker? They're magnificent birds. They're large. I mean, they've got the Woody Woodpecker look. You know, they got the red thing in the back there. But anyway, I've also got the water bowl there. Most all birds partake of the water bowl that are thirsty. I mean, or they can go to one of the two fountains and the water basin down below. Got the wavy house feeder, and that's really kind of, you know, I've got part of my feeder strategy is I put some of the, and not that I don't like house finches, we just have an abundance of them, and you know, they will just crowd like 5 birds on the feeder at a time. So I put a wavy house feeder with black oil sunflower seed over there to try to keep them on that feeder so they won't take up all the room in the platform feeder. I try to adjust the feed in the platform feeder toward getting more of the songbirds, and that's because I've got some dried mealworms in it, some suet balls, and I have very little black oil sunflower seed in that. Second question from R.W. Bain is, what birds do you hope to attract this fall? Well, I just started the cam October 31st of 19, so we haven't even been going a year yet. So I've been through my first spring and summer to see it, and it was cool because I got to see all the new juvenile birds and everything that hatched, and what the birds in the area. We got to see the parents bringing the juveniles to the feeder, the fledglings and juveniles to the feeder, and showing them, and it's so cool to watch that. You know, that they, number one, show them where it is. Number two, they start feeding them at the feeder. And number three, they kind of let the little juvenile, discover the food themselves. And then they'll start kind of standing off, and the little bird is sitting there with his mouth open, and then finally looks down and starts eating. And same with the woodpecker. I saw that with the suet. They led them to the suet feeder and fed them on the feeder, but then started, you know, kind of backing off feeding them. So that's kind of cool. So this is my first fall to see, and you know, what migratory birds we get coming through here. And so we hope to catch some of the birds migrating through. The red-breasted grosbeak, the summer tanagers, the scarlet tanagers, and indigo buntings, etc., are some of the birds that we've seen. And that kind of tapers into the feeding strategy a little bit, because I want to offer some of the you know, feed that they are interested in, and so. Anyway, I hope the American goldfinches will come and stay a while, and as the food sources start to taper off, we get more pine warblers and more traffic from the eastern bluebirds, because the insects start dying off, and they find the dried mealworms, and that's really kind of the only game in town. So we usually have a whole lot of activity from pine warblers and eastern bluebirds in the fall. The third question is from R.W. Bain. Plans on making changes to food or setup for the fall birds. Well, as you could kind of tell from my answers here just a second ago, is I'm always experimenting with feeders and food sources. I'm not, like I said, I've not even had it for a year, so I don't know exactly really what to expect. But I'll leverage eBird, and I encourage you guys feeding, or bird watchers, to always check eBird, because it's ebird.org is the website, to see what birds are in the area, and then target your food sources toward those birds. At least set aside one feeder. I don't say dedicate a whole feeder in a gamble. Some unique food, then a gamble that that bird will come through, and then all the other birds don't like it. If you put like out safflower seed or something specifically to target one bird, the rest of the birds are like, what? And I don't really like this. So, you need to have a separate feeder that you dedicate toward that bird. In this case, what I have out there now is 2 oranges and some grape jelly. So, in hopes of the summer tanager, scarlet tanager, we've seen the hummingbirds feed on it. That's kind of a specialized, and that's kind of an experiment. So you can see I'm kind of experimenting based on what we think might come through. So that's how we might try to attract some different birds that we don't normally get this fall, because this is a rest stop for the birds on migration. And anyway, question number 4 at R.W. Bain: other fall plans such as birdscaping or landscaping? Well, we're meeting with a landscape architect in early October. I mean, I've kind of tried to do my thing, but I'm not a green thumb. But our main project is not necessarily my feeder. I don't have that kind of money. So we are replacing shrubs that are 24 years old in our front yard. So we want to make sure that we get it done right. And you've got to submit a plan to the homeowner association, because this feeder is in residential suburbia. I mean, my lot's only 60 feet wide by 170 feet deep, and we're all stacked up here next to each other. My backyard, I'm backed up to my neighbor. You hear him all the time doing construction projects. So, but the main project is the shrubs in the front yard and getting the front looking good. But we're allocating some funds to doing the backyard, and I hope some around our feeders and that as well. And I want more native plants and blooming. I've always wanted kind of a blooming tree behind that main feeder there that has blossoms and berries and stuff like that. That's a great food source for the birds and easy on the eye. Now, we have a magnificent looking background in the fall when the leaves change, because we have a lot of deciduous trees here on Double Oak Mountain here that I'm on the side of. So anyway, we do need some plants with berries and some shrubs, that provide some cover. The more cover and food I have, the more I can coax birds to come in, and the more plants around, that are native, they harbor more bugs, and that attracts more birds. So, but the planting is supposed to be around the end of the year, or the first of 2021. So we ought to have a magnificent spring 2021. So I hope you guys are hanging around then to kind of watch things develop. Question number 5 of R.W. Bain. R.W. Bain's got a lot of questions, but I appreciate the questions, because, like I said, we are on a learning journey, and I'm sure this is some of he's posing questions just to help us out, to help other bird feeding enthusiasts. He said October grosbeaks and hummers leave, juncos come in. He pulls his nectar feeders and switches to some millet, and puts out pure suet, because he has starlings, and starlings are in Birmingham here. Apparently I'm not on the flyways yet for starlings, but once they find it, I'm in the boat with everybody else. So, I wish I could help folks with starlings. Most times I say, use a cage and have feeders separate, but starlings eat about everything, and they are bullies. I know that. So from what I've seen at other feeders, where cam feeders that I've watched. he said he can't feed suet all year round, and my answer is really I pull my nectar feeder about 2 weeks after my last sighting of a hummingbird, because even though your hummers may have left, the ones that are resident around your feeder, you might have some from up north still migrating down, and those guys need to juice up. They need that rest stop. They need to refill and get all keyed up and juiced up and bulked up and everything for the long journey. So it's helpful to just make sure you got all yours have migrated, and the ones that are coming from north southward on their journey, that you're able to help them as well. And if I start getting American goldfinches and they start arriving in numbers, I'll typically put an Alger seed feeder, or and some my maybe Droll Yankee that has some can hold some smaller feed like peanut chips to keep them around. Not much changes need to be made, as Mr. Bain said, for the juncos. They arrive and they just feed on the ground. I don't really even see them get much into the ground trays that much. Also, again, I monitor the migration activity on eBird and adjust my feeders or feeding towards attracting birds that might be heading south. And would love to get a Baltimore Oriole sometime. That's why I've got that orange and jelly out there now. Question number 6 by R.W. Bain. I also put out my first roost boxes. So any tips or ideas for fall, that would be great. Okay, like I said, I've only had my cams out for one season, and really bird feeders actually a little less. I mean, bird houses and roosting boxes actually less than that. My feeder's been about 2.5 years, and I really hadn't had the opportunity much, like I said, I've just been through my first spring, and only had one birdhouse out last fall and winter, so I added a bunch in kind of in the like January and February. Actually, a bird house making and feeder making company gave me about a number of feeders to try out at my feeder station. So that's why I got more houses now and roosting boxes in place. But I've not had the opportunity to observe the nesting behavior really, and I don't know quite, I've got to learn more about when you actually clean out nesting boxes. The last thing I want to do is open a nesting box and have birds in there with eggs or on their eggs or little fledglings. So I do have 4 boxes out, only 2 of the 4 being occupied by eastern bluebirds, and one bluebird box went unused, as did the wren box that I had. However, I've cleaned them out, and I do hope they'll return, and I think they will, and hopefully they'll have a spot for winter. Question number 7, R.W. Bain. You could also discuss migrating birds and how to help them, switching food, extra feeders, etc. Well, the birds that are migrating, they're seeking a habitat that provides temporary shelter to rest, as well as water, and which they use to drink and to bathe, actually. And they need to fuel in the form of oil and fat-rich seeds, like in nectar-producing plants and insects. If you have planted for such, is also vital. And use your feeders to provide migrating birds a variety of foods like millet blends, and that's what he had in his question as one of his previous questions. But it's important that we provide the fresh food for the migrating birds on the stopover, but providing variety is the key, because you really don't know what you're going to get, and so having a good variety of like suet and fat producing type seeds and proteins, and that is vital to trying to let them pick and choose what they need, their particular needs, before they fly off. And it says, besides millet blends provide high energy, high fat foods. Sunflower hearts provide protein, vitamins, minerals for healthy muscle muscles and weight gain that are critical during fall migration. Peanuts also provide calories and energy as well. Suet is a high energy food for energy and weight gain, and you can hang those in your suet feeders. Maintaining a bird bath is a way to provide a source of water for migrating birds. Moving water source is guaranteed way really to attract migrating birds to your backyard stopover. Even a migrating bird that doesn't see your moving water source, they might hear it and stop to check it out. And when they stop to drink, then sometimes that triggers a reaction of some of the other migrating birds. You've seen it. One bird hits a feeder and all of a sudden 10 hit the feeder there. And it's the same kind of with the water. So depending on how much they need to refuel, the birds might spend anywhere from 1 to 3 days at your backyard stopover just to kind of fuel up. And if you have a really attractive offering, that means that they could stay a little longer. Instead of 1 day, it could be the 3 days or something. But they're on a mission to head south, so they're not going to hang around for a week probably. R.W. Bain, question 8. He said he's sure he's answered this, but how long have I been bird feeding and how did it get started? I've always been interested in nature and the outdoors, and animals and birds and that. So and I became interested in photographing birds mainly because I was kind of a semi-pro sports photographer as a sideline job to my banking job. I filmed action, the action and sports action photography. So I didn't want to. You really can get out of practice if you don't practice that. So shooting birds is especially on the wing with your camera is. When a long telephoto lens is like looking at a paper towel tube and tracking a bird. I mean, it's a difficult thing, but it's something I like to do, and that photographing birds kind of led me into more video. As I watched more video, I said, hey, I want to do that. And video's even harder. I mean, in the editing and that. But anyway, back to the question. It's also easier to photograph birds if you have a feeder because they're in the locality, and some people actually get a clamp and clamp a stick onto their a perching stick onto their feeder, top of their feeder, so they can photograph a bird more naturally. So instead of seeing the bird just on a feeder pole, you've got a stick there that. And some people put it in a little bit of a proximity of the feeder to where it's not quite to the feeder. It's always a perching spot before they get to the feeder, and that sets you up a natural little pose. And you can compose it to where the background is the way you want it, and that get more bokeh or some pretty floral bush or something like that. But I started feeding birds about 3 years ago on my deck, and. But the birds weren't real kind to my white rails. My wife was getting after me and frankly, me cleaning it was not the fun thing to do. We were also getting raccoons up on our deck, so climbing up there. So it was getting, because they could. You have the pole that kind of hangs out over your deck, and they were reaching out. They'd actually tip the hummingbird feeder. It would dump the nectar on the ground, then they go on the ground and eat it up. So. And mealworms, I just have to pull those in. So, and it kind of can leave stains on your deck too, So, so 2 years ago I moved my feeder to the backyard, and but then I couldn't see them, and so I started looking for remote camera options. I found Scott Keller in Ohio's feeder cam setup, and I got in touch with him. I actually became part of his network, the Birdwatching HQ. Like I said, I started October 31st and went with him till about the end of the year. I think, he decided it was part of his strategy. It was better, for us to go. He had a number of cams on his network, but and now he's building some back up. But at the end of the year, we split up, and I started my own YouTube channel. Excuse me. And so Scott and I still stay in touch, and they're good friends, and I really appreciate what he did for me. So anyway, kudos to Scott. But when I created my own YouTube channel, I wanted to introduce it more as a learning channel, because that's just the way I am. I'm a lifetime student, so I like to learn and share what I learned, and I mean, nobody else will listen to me, so you guys have to put up with me. So I can talk about birds and stuff, as you know, for a long time. I mean, you have to like knock me away from the camera in front of the feeder. I just get to chatting. Okay, question number 9, Barbara Goldfuss. Where do juncos go? They migrate to in the spring and summer months. And frankly, I didn't know this. I just took a little research, but I didn't know how widespread dark-eyed juncos are. I mean, they're one of the most prevalent birds at feeders. Apparently, they have a wide distribution across Canada and the United States, and also reaching northern Mexico. And strays have even been reported in the Caribbean and Europe. So during the winter, the juncos readily come to backyard feeders for millet, sunflower seeds, foraging and on the ground in small flocks, with white-throated sparrows and northern cardinals and other common backyard finches. But their breeding is more up into Canada and that up and I have a graphic here that I'm posting. I plan to post here that might be just it's probably going on right now. That'll kind of show you where the breeding area is and where they winter. They winter more in the and of course in the southern United States, and so when they come around my feeder, it's they're there, and mainly feed on the ground. They don't really hop into the feeders, but the the slate-colored dark-eyed juncos are really more prevalent in the east, and that's what we end up having. They're more slate-colored. They're not the real dark color. There's a lot of different varieties of the dark-eyed juncos, but in answering your question, they winter mostly in Canada, and I'm sure they migrate down a little bit in the in the summer and the spring. They're mainly up in kind of probably more Canada and northern Canada, and then as it starts getting colder, they migrate down to the U.S. Question number 10. Windy Woo. For some reason, my birds have stopped visiting the feeder right outside my kitchen window. I used to fill the feeder up once a day, the long tubular kind. Now I do it only maybe once a week. Any ideas why and how I can get my birds back? And to me, I don't really. It depends on the birds and the environment, basically. What do I mean by birds? Is that during the fall, some birds start to migrate. So some birds that are on your feeder might migrate away, or so you since you didn't tell us what kind of birds, I don't really know if they're migratory or not type birds. It also could be the particular birds might be molting. So when some birds molt in the late summer, we don't see them as much at our feeders, as they're more vulnerable during that time, and they don't really get out in the open to try to feed. Although I will have to say that having a feeder gives the molting birds more of an opportunity to expend less energy, because it takes a lot of energy to molt. So they have to expend, and it's dangerous for them to get out. So if they can sprint to a feeder, then sprint away back to their cover that they are in while they're trying to stay protected, because they can't fly as well and all that while they're regenerating their feathers. Feeding, it really helps them out, but we might not see them as much. Regarding environment, I don't have COVID, I promise. The environment can be several factors. One is has there been any changes in the food? Another could be competition amongst other birds. Sometimes northern mockingbird or blue jays around. They can chase away the birds and discourage other birds from visiting the feeder, especially if your feeder, and in the case of a northern mockingbird, is near a northern mockingbird nest. If your kitchen window has that feeder right outside the window and you've got a bush below it, you might have a northern mockingbird down there with a nest. And anytime you're near that nest, that mockingbird's going to chase off any bird that comes in any near vicinity of that nest. And if your feeder's close to that, then you're not going to see much activity. So competition can also come in the form of a neighbor putting up a neighboring, putting up another feeder that's in competition with yours. And so I've heard other cam owners say, well, gosh, my neighbor started putting out feeders and I'm seeing a lot less activity. So, that could be the case too, and that draws birds away from your feeder. Also, as new available food sources in the wild can have birds feeding elsewhere. This happens when you come out of winter into spring and summer, where you've got more bugs and that available to the birds, and now the birds that were relying on the dried mealworms in your feeder for protein are now finding more juicier and tastier choices out in the wild, and therefore they don't come to your feeder as often. It's really kind of harder to get birds to your feeders in the spring and the summer than it is in the winter when you're the only game in town. It's supply and demand. You've got the supply and they've got to eat. So it also could be that you have a new predator, such as a hawk, that kind of visiting the area. I seem to have a Cooper's hawk that's kind of checking in. The birds will just freeze every now and then, and folks will come, make comments, say, "Ken, you need to go to your backyard to scare off the hawk." So I go out there and I clap and walk around, and with a lot of foliage this time of year, it's hard to spot the hawk, and it's amazing how the birds at the feeder do spot the hawk, because I'll look around, I won't see anything, and those birds are just frozen, and you can see them kind of looking off to one side or something. But anyway, so there's numerous environmental factors that can affect the traffic at a bird feeder. You can try changing food sources, to see if they return, or if near a mockingbird nest, you probably need to move the feeder at least, while that bird is nesting there. The 11th question is Mel in Northwest Florida. Is there a way to combat the dominance issue of at the hummingbird feeders, or is that just hummingbird life? The answer is that's kind of hummingbird life. The hummingbirds are very territorial, and they chase each other off my feeder all the time. I've only got 3 of them, but you'll see them, a bird arrive and then another bird will come diving in. I mean, I've tried to slow that down with, frame at a time to kind of get put it on video, but it's so quick. They're in and out of the frame in like 2 frames, so it's just a blur. But one, and I only have 1 nectar feeder, so a potential solution, I can't guarantee this, but and you see a lot of people on these hummingbird cams, a lot of, they got a bunch of feeders there, and then they got a bunch of birds all right around, is to offer up several nectar feeders, place more distance from your original nectar feeder, and that way that spreads out the food sources, from one where they're all coming to and running into each other, to a little more area for them to not be so territorial. There'll still be some males, I guess, don't like other males being there, so that, I think that's true with even birds, not just hummingbirds, but that spread them out has a less crowded area, and therefore hopefully less fighting and protecting of the food sources, at least. All right, from Big Daddy, question number 12: have you done anything, meaning planting plants or trees to attract birds? And that's a great question, because I was reading a book on native planting and planting native plants in your yard, versus putting a lawn out there, which is kind of like a desert for birds, if you just put total grass out there. I did plant a garden with a native flower mix, and that was to attract pollinators and bugs and hummingbirds and such. And my hopes that was by attracting bugs, it would provide more food for the birds. And you know, there's kind of some theories on that well, if you do that, aren't they going to be feeding in your garden outside of where you want to see them, and not necessarily in your feeder? Remember that your feeder is kind of a complement to the natural environment around us. You know, your feeder can attract birds, and especially in the wintertime. Like I said, it's the only game in town. But it's really a complement to what's out there and what the birds eat naturally. So by having these native plants in your yard, you have more staying power of the birds to stay in the area around your feeder, and therefore use your feeder more. It's kind of the way I look at it. But my hopes are by attracting bugs, you know, it'd provide more food for the birds and the type flowers there. You know, if I get pollinators, I get more butterflies, hummingbirds. And of course, this is my first attempt, and my thumb's not very green apparently, but maybe landscape architect, or maybe I'll have a little money left to allocate to that, and he can provide some help in that way. But I did strategically plant some red cedar trees and place a feeder pole a set distance from the feeders. You know, the cedar trees provide quick cover for the birds. When a predator comes, they can dash into those trees and be hidden a little bit and protected. But they don't. But they're springy branches, so it don't provide enough purchase or footing for a squirrel to climb up and jump and get to my feeders. Because I have a rule about the feeder pole being about 10 feet from any tree or fence that a squirrel can use to jump from, and that includes branches. So if you got cover, if it can be shrubs or cedar tree with kind of springy branches that they can't get a footing on to spring off of, then that's good, and that provides cover, close cover, you know, for the birds, and I think that's important. I'm sorry, I should have, let me get some water here. Sorry. So, you know, I meet with a landscape architect in early October. I hope to have the plantings in place in January and to be ready for spring. So stay tuned on news for that effort. The last question is from Celia. How much nectar do you go through, and how much mealworms? Well, you know, I always talk about supply and demand and weather being the three factors, you know, that they go into play. And in my case, hummingbirds, I don't have a whole lot of demand. So therefore the supply, you see, I only fill up my feeders where it looks like they're, I mean, number one, I've got too big a hummingbird or nectar feeder for the amount of traffic that I get, you know. So that might be something to think about, is if you don't have a lot of hummingbirds, you know, you don't need a big hummingbird feeder. Well, I got kind of a big hummingbird feeder and not many birds, so build it and they will come. Well, you know, I hope. I guess I'm being too enthusiastic, but as a result, you only see the bottom part of my nectar in there. Well, because this time of year, you know, now it's getting to be fall, but I mean, when you start putting it out, for me, it's in April, mid-April. You know, it starts warming up, and the nectar doesn't last that long. So if I were to fill up the feeder, you know, after 2 or 3 days, when it starts to get bad in the heat, I'd be dumping out a whole lot of nectar that I made. And nectar is 1 part sugar to 4 parts water. You boil 4 cups of water and then stir in the sugar, let it cool, and then you pour some in the feeder and put the rest in the refrigerator. So I don't use a whole lot. More is probably lost to evaporation, frankly, than the 3 birds consume. So 10 cups of nectar, I actually mix a double batch when I do, and I put it in the refrigerator, like I said. Lasts me a couple of weeks. Mealworms, you know, seems like there's been a lot less taken lately for some reason. I don't know, but 11 pounds will generally last me about 3 months. So I need to think about that. You know, if they're eating less of it, but I think as we get into fall and winter, there'll be more demand. Right now, the demand's kind of off, and I can figure why. It might be that alternate food sources out there. That they're not kind of, you know, once the bluebirds start coming and the pine warblers in the late fall and the winter when it starts getting cold, then I'll be going through a lot more dried mealworms. So anyway, that's really, there were 13 questions. That's really about all the questions that I had queued up so far. And I really appreciate the folks and you guys, you know, offering up some questions. It forces me to learn as well. So, you know, they say that, you know, the teacher learns as much as the students. So I'm trying to be a good steward of information here and try to pass things along to you guys. But I really appreciate you tuning in, and hope you'll subscribe and share it with other folks that you think might be interested. I mean, there's so many different uses for it besides enjoying the birds. Some people just like it as a distraction. If you're sitting at your desk and you're fortunate enough to have 2 monitors, I never did when I worked, you can put that on one of your monitors. It's like having a outside window, big bay window right next to you while you're doing your work, kind of chill you out. Some people use it as a pet sitter. You know, their animals get kind of frantic when they're away, so they put it on the big screen TV, stream it from their computer, I guess, or plugged in iPad or something, powered iPad, and stream it. Or you get a lot of the TVs now are smart TVs, and you know, you can just dial it to YouTube and put it on the channel and let it run all day. For your pets, for those of you who pamper your pets like I do, or did when I had a dog. So there's a lot of people like to chillax with it, put it on as a background, because a lot of times if you're, I know me and my wife are like sit in the chair and kind of play on our iPads or kind of read and do stuff while the TV is kind of a background source. It's great for that. You can stream it to your TV and just have the calm nature sounds. Some people like it when they get up in the morning, the coffee before they go to work, just kind of chill out. But anyway, however you use it, we just really appreciate it. And subscriptions, subscribing helps us. If you want to be notified of any videos like this that I put out periodically, hit the notifications. We love the like. Hit the thumbs up for us as well. That helps us. But subscribing also makes it easier for you to find your way back. And there's tips on you know, opening up a tab in the other window. I tried to provide on that main window a picture in a picture, so you can kind of see both simultaneously. And on a big screen TV, that's a lot more meaningful, a lot more real estate for the picture. You can really see kind of what's going on with that bottom feeder. But if you're on a computer and you don't have a big screen TV, something like that, you can right click on it and say open in a new tab, and the lower feeder in a new tab. Then if you see something on the main bird feeder in that little picture in a picture that you're interested in, then you can click on that other tab and open up full screen the bottom feeder and see what's going on, and try, if it's a bird you hadn't seen before, or a squirrel or a chipmunk or whatever, you can tune in on it. But thanks so much again for hanging with me here, and please keep the questions coming. We're going to try to do this once a month, and I really appreciate you guys so much. And please thank your moderators, because they do the heavy lifting. They're on more than I am. I'm kind of into the content production, and I'm the feeder maintenance guy. Now that the weather's cooling down, I'm gonna get more out in the field and try to do some more videos, you know, of birds and animals, and you know, reviews, I guess, of some of the parks in Alabama and wild areas in Alabama and the Panhandle of Florida mainly. So stay tuned, and once again, thanks again, and give us your questions, and tune in and tell your friends and subscribe. This is Ken Little. I'm signing off. Thank you.